one of the things you really want to give strong consideration to is how credible is the person or is the group that's bringing forth a proposal. That's going to weigh heavily on your decision as to whether to move forward with a proposal or perhaps decide to take a pass on it. You also want to make sure that they do have a sound educational program or educational plan for what they're going to do in the charter. So pay particular attention to what they're proposing as their means of elevating student achievement in that charter school. And then they should be able to address for you how they plan to ensure that those goals are going to be attained. So it becomes their monitoring document, which can then be folded into how you're going to monitor them. They need a plan for how they're going to measure student progress, and not just the yearly progress that comes from yearly testing, but how they're going to know that student growth is taking place on a regular basis. And then finally, you want to make sure that they do have a governance plan that does ensure that you've got parent and community involvement in this charter school proposal. What are your responsibilities as a school board who's thinking of authorizing? Well, according to the charter school legislation, you're actually supposed to solicit, evaluate, and act on applications. And that doesn't mean that if you don't do it, you're not being a good school board. But if you are giving some thought to charter schools and you want to look at some possibilities, that's a good way to do it. And an RFP, whether it be a formal or an informal RFP, might be a good way to do it. You have to consider the NACSA principles and standards, and there is a real nice booklet put out by NACSA called Principles and Standards. It's a great resource document, and it's one that you should look at. It's very easy to read, and it's very, very informative for anybody that's even thinking about a charter school. In Wisconsin, again, you have to give preference to schools that serve at-risk youth. So if you've got a proposal that is doing that, you've got to at least give that some serious consideration. Approving applications that serve only an identified need. I've said before that you can have the most wonderful charter school idea in the world, but if it doesn't meet any needs you have in your district, it's probably not going to work. And you have to monitor performance and compliance. And finally, at the end of each year, in December of each year actually, you're required to submit an authorizer report. So as the authorizer, you've got to ensure that in your compliance documents, you're receiving the information you need from the charter school so that you can do your due diligence and submit that annual report each year by the end of December. Finally, the expectations for charter school applicants. Make sure that they have provided a clear and compelling mission to you, and that they have created a program that is going to be considered to be a quality educational program for kids. Having a solid business plan, and again, if you are an instrumentality, a good share of the cost of any school, whether it be a charter school or whatever, is staffing costs. Well, if it's an instrumentality, you have built in a lot of those costs in the staffing, but they've still got to have a plan for how are we going to make sure we have the supplies we need? How are we going to make sure that we have these other components that are necessary to operate a charter school? You've got to make sure there's effective governance of that charter school. The management structures and systems, again, if it's an instrumentality, the district is going to have some hand in helping to develop those management structures, but those structures, when they're put together, are managed by the governance board, not by the school board. But think about that also. As a school board, your school tends to be successful when your board is engaged, they meet on a regular basis, they thoroughly talk through the issues. There's no reason to believe that a charter school is going to be any differently. A charter school will be successful if your governance board also commits to the fact that we need to meet regularly. We need to talk about the issues. We need to stay engaged in what's going on. And failure to do that is going to sound the death knell for a charter school. You've got to make sure that you've got good committed founding team members, and you've got to make sure that you are able to execute the plan that you're going to do. It's wonderful. You can have the greatest plan in the world, but if there isn't any follow through, it doesn't go anywhere. So as you're evaluating a proposal, really give consideration with these people that are all excited about this. Can they actually get it done? And if you don't believe they can, then you need to hold off until you're sure. Because if you decide to start a charter school, you want it to be successful.